Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, this will be an enjoyable evening. We want to really keep it interactive, so please jump in with things that you hopefully do not agree with. Trouble my panelists as much as you want. And those who do a good job of it, an extra glass of wine on me. So, with that, I would like to begin with this simple question. What, according to all of you, is an emerging artist? The fact that you all are here, it's pretty natural to assume that there is interest in visual arts, right? Active or passive, but there is an interest in visual arts, which is great. But what do you believe is sort of the definition of an emerging artist? Anyone?
Sure.
Probably an artist who has the potential to be really big. And it's kind of on his journey to reach.
Right. So someone that has the potential to be big, but is not yet there, right? So that's a good point. You were saying something. Someone who started to exhibit. So the exhibition aspect is somewhat important here, but someone who's just started to do that. Anyone else? Any? Yes.
Someone who hasn't been discovered yet.
Someone who hasn't even been discovered as yet, right? So we take a lot of pride in actually going around gem hunting. Yeah, okay. And anyone else? Yes. Someone who hasn't discovered himself or herself, right? Absolutely. Yes.
Someone who's a trendsetter is the sense of introducing maybe a new form of art, maybe a new format of art, texture.
So breaking the mold and sort of creating a new trend as far as the format or the way visual arts can be seen, right? Absolutely, absolutely. Right. So I think all of that is true. I will come to my panelists. So is there a way that you would like to, I know you all had a lot of problem 15 minutes back on the word definition, but who do you call an emerging artist? So very quickly, Swanzal, do you want to begin?
So I think I agree with what the voices we heard here. I think emerging is somebody who's entered the public domain for the first time with a particular form of art. And I think that if it is something which is different from what you've been seeing, that could be, but it would be a new voice. So to me, it would be, because, emerging artist is anybody actually who's starting their work in the art space, right? Good, bad, ugly will be determined along the way and, how the story progresses. So I'm assuming that we're not putting a value to how good this artist is. But if you're saying emerging artist, and I think the idea of potential was very interesting, because definitely I think within the mentorship space, you want to be working with somebody where you see that there's this long journey ahead and that there is potential to be authentic and be different from what people have seen so far. So I think that would be my definition. And as we also said, I think this doesn't relate to age necessarily, because you could have people who have started, transitioned from careers, moved from architecture to art, there's so many artists who kind of discover their voice in art later in life. So it doesn't have to be somebody who's necessarily 20 or 18 or 22. You could be an emerging artist at 50 or 60 or 70, so there's no age restriction on that. So
fantastic. Yeah. Rahul.
Yeah, so the temptation tends to be either demographic, somebody younger, or financial, because art has now become considered an asset class. But if you tweak those out, emergence could be that, whoever's discovering a story coming through. So I agree that I think we can take the demographics out. And at the time that we were collecting art, everything was emergent art because there was no retrade. There was no secondary market. So that gave us a lot of freedom. So literally, even if they were older artists, they were all emerging if you don't go with today's definition. That said, all the art we bought, I'm hoping some of them will re-emerge. Because they kind of flatline on the way. But now the fact that you can't help but equate certain monetary angle to it. So I'm like praying for the re-emergence of some. That said, I think emerging artists, to me, again, I go with Swanzal. It's age neutral, it's price neutral, it's something. And by taking those two elements out, it's exactly what you collect art for. Just the beauty of it.
Right. Sure. Gayatri.
I think we've discussed this a lot because with Art Incept, we only work with emerging artists. And there are times when we have to take new artists and we kind of say, okay, are they emerging? But I think, again, I'd agree with both Swanzal and Rahul. It's really about the stage of their career. So if they are early career in art, so they could have been architects and then moved to art, and then they are in an early stage in their career in art, they are emerging. I would just kind of like summarize it as that. Yeah, actually, Rahul's an emerging artist.
He certainly is. So I think we all agree that biological age is not important. I think your age as an artist is probably important, right? So your art career has not sort of been for many years and decades. And to that extent, as a gallerist, you are interested in someone who is still not completely set in their ways and ideas, right? So you are looking for artists who are still willing to push themselves, willing to experiment, willing to get mentored, right? And, we spoke about the price points. I think naturally when you're looking at emerging talent, the price points are bound to be relative to rest of the world, be more achievable, right? So if that is also a yardstick to look at. So now that we all agree at this sort of a benchmark, why is it even important to look at this section, this genre, this category of artists, right? We have, the modern masters, the progressives. Then we have established senior contemporary artists. We have a whole lot of folk and tribal culture. And now guess what? I mean, there is moving imagery, there is NFT, there is the digital influx, right? So with all that is available to us, when we talk about emerging as a category, is there a reason for us to specifically look at that? Gayatri, I'd like to begin with you, especially because as Art Incept, as a gallery, that's absolutely an area that you focus on. Why do you think it's important?
I guess, our purpose is to support and promote emerging artists. So yes, for me, the definition and, why emerging is very clear. But I think if you look at it, there are, I would say 5 things that you can look at in terms of emerging art. Emerging artists tell you, they document and express, the times that we live in. It is stories from today, and whether it's the environment, whether it is socio-economic political issues, whether it's migration, urbanization, they're really telling you about what's happening in the world around us today. So it is our lived experience. So I think that's really what makes them special, because they tell us what we are going through in our lives, and they remind us about things that sometimes we might ignore.
It's a bit of a mirror.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mirror. Right. I think the second thing I would say is related to the first, because today in the age we live in, experimentation, innovation is key. And emerging artists are not afraid of experimenting, trying out new techniques, trying out new material. So we have a show outside, and if you walk through that show, you will see such a drastic, there's so much variety. There's a Vishwanath Kutum who uses linseed oil, liquid paraffin, beeswax, and color powder on paper, and then that's transferred on wood. You have Shantanu that uses ancestral soil and cement. You have Savita using fabric, and then you have Nilanjan using photography, and so there's a huge range of materials that they use. There's so much innovation happening, and that's so exciting, and something that everyone should kind of look at when you look at emerging artists. And then I think there's the third thing that everybody likes talking about, and that's affordability. Right. Yes, emerging artists give you that opportunity for young collectors to come and buy emerging art. But I think also affordability brings that freedom. The freedom to choose art that really connects with you, that resonates with you. And then when you put that in your house, it also talks about who you are as a person. You know, when you're looking at, established art or masters, what happens is you start using your mind. Is the provenance right? Is this artist going somewhere? What do you think? You know, is this the source correct? So you're using so much of your mind, you forget about your heart. And I think when you pick emerging art, it's so much heart.
This is also, is it the right period of that artist that I'm buying?
Yeah.
Right? It is that phase of that artist. So, I mean, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think the cerebral really takes over when you're looking at an established practice, and also, whether we like it or not, an expensive work of art, right? You just can't go with the flow that I really fell in love with it. Sorry, I interrupted. You had another.
So the fourth, I would say, is again that, you have this amazing opportunity to buy an artwork of an artist in the early stages of their career. So you can grow with them. It's a relationship and a bond that you can create at that very early stage. And I think, again, there's a lot of conversation about, is it an investment? I don't think when someone bought maybe a Hussain 40 years ago for 1,000 rupees, they were looking at investment. They were looking at what really worked for them at that point. So I think that's that opportunity for all of you, that if you go with an emerging artist, you have that ability to kind of support an artist at a very early career. And I think I want to leave the fifth thing which is a little more social, but I just really believe that, when you buy an emerging artist, you are supporting the next generation of artists. When you buy a work, you actually are you're allowing them to stay in their practice, you're allowing them to grow. And I think, and that is a journey that you can take together with them. And when you buy something that's established, or even a master who's not alive anymore, sorry, you're not doing that, So I think it's so special that when you buy an emerging artist, you're literally a relationship which will grow over time.
So I'll just very quickly jump in. So Art Incept launched sort of a grant program that originated at the time of COVID, because there were artists that really had absolutely no money to even sustain, right? That was an issue with sort of lots of sectors, lots of people. But I think at that time, the grant was instituted just so that they could stay in their practice, they could still continue to practice, right? So completely agree. So if you're buying a work of art of a master who's sort of no more alive, you're obviously looking at it purely as an asset, even if you like it. But if you buy an emerging artist, you're actually supporting someone to stay in their practice and continue to make art. Swanzal, any additional points that you want to make?
I think I agree with everything she said. I think, to me, it's the dynamic quality of what an emerging artist brings to the space. I think that they probably have the purest voice. And we had this conversation about artists really being a medium and not for receiving when they create. And I think that because they carry the least baggage of expectation of what the audience is looking for, I think there's a great deal of authenticity. And as Gayatri said, there's a lot of heart. And there's a lot of purity in I've been kind of watching her journey with Art Incept and these young artists from the first exhibition. And I'm always blown away by the work. And to me, it's all about being moved by art. And I think I've always been deeply moved by what I've seen. There have been artists who are, making paper out of agricultural waste, out of corn, and that's also because they actually have no resources. So these are ways that that desire to create art is so strong that they're overcoming incredible circumstantial challenges to create this. So as we were discussing earlier, I think these are the most vulnerable people in the art ecosystem. So it's so important for people to realize how valuable that is, and beyond everything else of, whether it's affordable, you connect with it. I think, we have a responsibility to keep that alive, because we will lose, the art space will lose a lot if these voices don't get the support that they need at that very vulnerable point when they're starting out. And as we were discussing earlier, you could have circumstances which are beyond their control of why they're not received the first time they kind of come out in the public domain. And at that point, if they don't have mentorship and they don't have people who make sure that they get heard, or at least an opportunity to get heard, you could lose an artist forever,
Right.
And that's something which I think is critical. I think more and more, I think we need art in this world.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. How do you discover promising emerging talent? And I asked this, because Rahul and Rahul's lovely artist wife Manisha, who's in the audience, they started collecting 25 years back, 30 years back? Okay, many more years back. You don't look that old, but never mind. That's a compliment. So, when you started collecting, and some of the names that are absolute stalwarts and established artists and very sought after artists today, when you probably saw their work, bought their work for the first time, they were emerging at that time, right? And like you rightly said, when you started off, you collected works that you would like some of them to re-emerge, meaning thereby their career has probably not gone as sort of a graph that is sort of flattened and plateaued at some point, right? And some of them have really made it big. So for a collector who's starting this journey and looking at emerging artists and early to mid-career artists, what would be your advice basis the experience of you building this phenomenal collection, which is in every nook and corner of your home?
So in a way, the answer dovetails to the previous question. When we started by art, it was what art was like all about. It was like self-indulgence. So it's good that we have three different perspectives coming here. Mine is really about, but art collection was really about self-indulgence. And a big criteria for me was living with that beauty. There was nothing more beautiful for me than to get up on a Sunday morning, surrounded by the art I could speak to. When I talk about re-emergence, yes, some of it is because maybe they flatlined on the career path commercial. But some of them maybe did evolve in their thought process. Maybe they decided to cocoon themselves and the language kind of flatlined. Maybe I grew out of it because that relationship with the paintings is a little bit like love, and you're going to fall in love with more than one time. So, this
Manisha,
art.
look what he's saying.
I exhausted all of that, before.
It's on camera now. Sorry, there are no U-turns on this one.
The one thing my panelist picks up, right? So, but that's true, Rahul. I mean, in the sense that there's artwork in the house, and even like art that I don't own, but they're masters. When growing up, I would kind of say, I don't relate to that art. Like Hussain Saab, right? I always, but was admired the man. Maybe I didn't understand the art. And I've got to admit, now that I'm painting myself, I try to replicate the way his strokes, because nobody had that boldness in the way his hands moved, right? So I've tried to recreate that. So point is, first of all, how did it happen? Well, first of all, I did have an advantage. Commerce wasn't a factor. It wasn't even in the equation. So we had this beautiful thing called freedom. And when art grew, because I'm married to an artist, I was happy that there's money around art. I remember at one point in time, we had gone to her relative's home in Ludhiana. And people asked her what she did. And she said, I paint. And I remember this lady kind of peering in saying, and I've got to say this in Punjabi. She said, Naal beauty parlor the course bhi kita hai. You're going to go with this art. And it's come such a long way since, because people today call her up to say, can you help my kid get admission in an art college, which I have hard to get to. So it's come a long way. I'm happy for that part. But you know what? It's also been a buzzkill, because we saw the first coming of art. Who do you think made money? The galleries? The people who were collecting? Absolutely not. It was people who would have made money selling scrap metal, the people who understand money. So when I recently have people saying, I love art, but I don't understand the asset class, and I'm thinking, when the hell did this become asset class? Right, And when you talk about emerging artists, you want to stay away from that notion. You want to go in for the punt, right? Because it's kind of like, it's like how people invest in businesses. The only thing that's predictable is the irrationality, right? You ask anybody who's investing around from an angel, investor, first round trading, they'll say 8 will crash, 1 will return the money, 1 will kind of cover up for it. So it's a bit like that. Could we predict who's going to grow? Absolutely not. I remember the number of times we'd have, and I won't even name them because it kills me every time that we didn't buy that art. Big canvas, 2 lakhs, but instead we bought 2 drawings, 2 prints, and then we came back very happily. We got 5 pieces back, and I wish I could go back in time, but there was no knowing. So I think for me, there are some factors that I did consider, and I do consider even today, because even now I buy, in fact, we bought something from Art Incept show. I now today don't have that freedom. The commerce around the art is a reality. But I do need a story. So when I now buy an emerging art, I'm buying it for my kids. But my first criteria has not changed, which is it beauty I can live with?
Sure. But some very interesting points made. Swanzal, well, first, step back. Do you believe as an architect, are you an influencer for a lot of people to look at art and to acquire art?
So, I have a problem with this word influencer, frankly.
Right. Sorry.
Let me just say that. Like, I think it's
an Instagram influencer.
Yeah. Like, I don't like the word. But yes, am I consulted? I think very, very deeply so.
So, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You will be asked for consultation if people are already interested. I'm saying, do you bring in the idea that, hello, you've seen everything else. Are you looking at art for your walls?
No, so, I think there's a great deal of awareness now, Rahul, around this. India's not where it was 10 years ago. And while I also actually have a very strong point of view on how people are really uneducated in India about art, frankly. I think our awareness of design, our awareness of art in the deepest sense of the word, not just as what he was talking about, like I'm talking about art history, about art movements, understanding what art can do. So understanding it beyond, of course, there's the feeling and there's the connection and being moved by it and the beauty of it. But there's a lot more to art than just that, right? So I think that even though people are now far more aware than they were, let's say, 10 years ago, because now it's become a business, now it's become an industry. So there's a lot more movement. There are a lot more exhibitions, there are more galleries. So you have access to a lot more work. Does it necessarily mean that people have actually connected more deeply with art? I don't think that's true at all, still, at least in my eyes. But yes, when I'm looking at architectural spaces and interior spaces, I think everybody has realized how integral art is to the experience of a space.
So in that context...
I just want to say one more thing.
Sure.
And of course, you have the entire range. So since we're talking about stories, there are clients who are like, I know nothing about art. You please tell me what to put here. That's one end of the spectrum. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where people have actually lovingly created art over years, maybe over generations. So they have their mother's art, they have the grandmother's art. And when you're looking at situating that in a space, you're extremely sensitive to those memories and the value that it has and how it comes together in a space. So, that's the kind of spectrum. But I think that perhaps the role that I do play is that because I care so deeply about art, it's not just a pretty picture. It's much more than that. I hope that I convey that to the people that I work with on their homes. And I think most of them, do, in my experience, do understand a little more deeply because I explain. I make the effort of explaining.
They get influenced, although you don't like the word. All right.
They hear me.
How do you, all right. How do you combat this question that I'm sure comes up very often on, fine, I'm willing to spend this money but can you ensure that my money, my investment won't go down?
So, I have to say this, that none of my clients have ever brought that up. Ever. Ever.
Amazing.
Ever.
Amazing. Interesting.
And if they did, then I would want to share my response publicly.
All right. Is there a method to the madness to build a collection? And especially when you're looking at the space of emerging artists. So, there are various ways you connect. You obviously look at something that, speaks to you and it's beautiful to you. You want to have it and you want to engage with it on a daily basis in your home. Sure. But is there, are you looking at a wider spectrum of a certain narrative and a certain exploration, and therefore you're looking at various artists working in that space? Or are you looking at fewer artists, one artist, two artists, and going deep in, right? So Swanzal and then Gayatri, how do you believe is a good way to begin a collection and to sustain collecting?
So, when it comes to, I'm of course speaking as an architect and as an interior designer, and how art impacts space, because I think I would like to extend what you're saying into space, because that's how I would be advising somebody, right? So I think for me, the first thing that I agree with what Rahul said earlier is that I think it's connection. So there is nothing more important than connection. Unless an artwork is speaking to you and continuing to speak to you. So I think what's very important to me is the quality of art to be different things across time. So how does it change across time? It has to be an artwork that will have enough of depth that you will see different things across time. So that's, for me personally, one of the things that I look for when I'm advising clients on work for their home. I think secondly, the materiality. So if you look at how art is placed within a space, there's always the hero artwork in a space. Okay, that's one work which is going to, be the dominant work, and it's positioned in a place which is the dominant area within the interior, right? And then everything else kind of becomes supportive. How do you select it in terms of what is the content, what is the medium, what is the emotional quality of that artwork as well? So I think what's very important to me is I feel art influences the experience of a space far more than we sometimes realize. So whether it's color, whether it's composition, whether it's
just the subject.
The subject, whether it's how much energy it draws in or how much energy it gives out. These are all qualities of art.
It's amazing.
Right?
Amazing.
And how it's very intuitive, like, how one guides people through this process, that you want the space to be in a balanced conversation. So it's the art speaking to the other art, it's the art with the colors in the room and the light in the room. And there's so many things that one considers. But I think always, to me, that is it. How does it sit together? What is the emotional quality? What is the connection that you have with the space? And I would say, for me personally, it is also important to have diversity. So to your question of would you go wide and look at diverse voices or go deeper into one artist's work, I think the quality that one is looking for is always freshness. And when you see diverse works and what they do when they're placed together in a space or as part of your collection as well,
sure,
it's a very different quality of what it gives you back.
So, in some ways, that's very interesting. In some ways, an artist is obviously expressing, is telling a narrative, telling a story. But what a collector does is also telling a story, is telling a narrative using works of art created by others. So end of the day, it is still the collector's story being told using works that have been created by others, right? So it's still your story in that sense.
True, but also depending on what the motives of that collection are.
Of course. I mean, there is this whole asset class, investment, etc. Right? So
then you're getting just
fully, you're getting some money somewhere. Gayatri, about building a collection, right? So, I mean, do you have a point of view, especially in the context of emerging artists?
I think I kind of agree with Swanzal that it is, a diverse voices, more voices. But I think when we look at clients and when they're looking for work, we do kind of try to understand what is it that they stand for, what are their likes, because there are so many different voices. It could be around the environment, it could be around social issues. So it's really about trying to kind of get clients to kind of connect with the work that truly speaks to them. And when it's in the house, it's again back to that same thing, that the works tell you a story about them. And that's what's beautiful, is that whole fact that you're taking stories from artists, but you're creating your own story.
Yeah, so it's far more than just sort of selling a work of art. It's actually a whole advisory to first understand who they are, and then ensuring that they sort of see the works that connects with them, right? I think this segment, and I want to be conscious of the time. How much time do we have? I can go on till midnight. I hope audience has some questions. Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When are you coming to snatch 15 more minutes? So just a very quick last question, and then I want to open it to the audience. And I hope you all have many questions. It's a fantastic panel here. We spoke about the vulnerability of these young artists, especially in the context of the current times, right? The economic pressures, etc. There are lots of art schools that are producing artists every year, and those who passed out last year and the year before that aren't particularly dead. I mean, they're still around and producing, so it's just getting added every year, right? It's a crazy number that gets added. If we were to go by people who are getting educated in art, of course, and that's not, there are artists who are self-taught, there are artists who are going to other artist studios and learning, etc., right? So all of that is in addition. Number of art galleries remain very limited, far and few in between get launched every year, and the collector base sort of slowly increases, right? So clearly it is a vulnerable space for these young artists when they say that I want to be an artist, I want to practice as an artist, right? Selling their work, and getting clients to buy their work, collecting their work, certainly is a very, very important. Commerce and economics, financial things, very important, no denial. Are there other ways to support, and are there other things that the art ecosystem sort of is looking at, should look at, as we're looking at this category?
I could kind of speak the whole evening because there's so much you can do, so much. Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons Incept came about. Is I do come from my mother's run an art gallery for the last 30 years, working with established as well as masters. And when we were looking at Incept, it was driven by the fact that there are some amazing voices that deserve to be heard. And these are the only ones we can see. There are so many we are not able to reach. And there are zero platforms. We don't live in a country where there is a huge amount of art support coming from the government. So there is, I think, really a lot more kind of a role that all of us have to play to get these voices to be heard. And really, I think beyond setting up, I think architects, designers play such an amazing role in influencing clients to kind of buy emerging artists. And there is so much others. I'm going to leave it to everyone else to kind of think, but I think there's so much that needs to be done.
It needs to be done and can be done.
And can be done.
Quick closing comments on this, Swanzal?
So, I mean, there's so much that can be done beyond, like when it comes to art, like taking art to schools. I can think about a million ideas of how, and emerging artists are great in that space because, it's actually, they have the time, they have, there's so much that you can do to build art awareness. How is this going to change for integrally is the question. And I think integral change and awareness of the quality of what emerging artists bring to the space will happen only when you actually educate the entire population on the value of art, which starts with schools.
Absolutely.
So I would think workshops, having artists connect with young children, having artists connect with crafts traditions, that's another great way to look at collaborations, and so throw open what this energy can do to traditional forms as well. I think that would be a great thing to do. And I think that just having more people who are supporting, get more people on the table when it comes to realizing that emerging artists need to be supported.
Is an important
I mean, I think Gayatri stands by herself in the current art space of supporting emerging artists, and I know you're actively involved with Art Incept as well, but we need more of you. I think, because it's only going to happen. Many more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rahul.
So, a little bit divergent over here. I mean, I understand the question, not necessarily relate to it. I collected art because I really wanted to paint. As a kid, I painted, I made comics, and everything that I did ultimately was meant to get to where I'm finally painting. That said, I'm empathetic to the artist, but as a collector, I'm not necessarily altruistic. I am self-indulgent when it comes to collection. I buy for something that I can relate to, enjoy. Again, I'm corrupted by the idea that I need to now rationalize what I buy. So when I buy young emerging artists, I'm buying it for my kids, like I said. I'm no longer buying emerging art for myself. But I do want to throw in something to the collectors out there and hoping maybe convert a few, which is to say that each of you is an art buyer already, even if you haven't bought art. Some of you are experts at what dining options you take. Some of you may be experts in travel, wardrobe. And how have you built that skill? You built that skill by spending time on it, by investing yourself, by making comparisons, visiting, revisiting, having those conversations. So I urge many of you to go out there and look at more art. Don't be in a rush to buy, but at least indulge and partake. And hopefully that will give you some sense of understanding, discernment, and hopefully take the first step, which is what every artist needs, a buyer.
Absolutely. So on that beautiful note, the table's turned. There is a huge responsibility that everyone has in this room to engage in art, to support art, and emerging artists is an important area to look at. But with that, it's open for questions. Either you'll ask questions or I'll ask you. Yes, please. Is there a mic that we can quickly give? I think it'll. Yes.
Yeah, so thanks for presenting all of your views, and it's just lovely to listen to people who really live for art. So I always appreciate galleries that bring out emerging talent, because I think this is the service that you're doing to humanity and to art. So I really appreciate the work that you do with emerging artists. And so it also, I think there's aspect of originality to it. They're not really copying any masters. And as you explained, it's their own lived, authentic experience, which they're trying to express in their purest form. So when I buy from an emerging artist, so about their intent matching my interpretation, and also the fact that it's relatable, and pride of ownership is really important. I can maybe flaunt a piece by and say, oh, this is by Raza or Hussain, but then no one has heard of. So I think as galleries, you're also taking that risk to bring them to the fore, and also when you make a sale, or you're promoting them as artists, helping them in their path to becoming established artists. So it's a lot of risk involved for the galleries, not only for the collectors. So yeah, when it speaks out to me, and I know, this is something I really connect with. So I think that's a wonderful service you're doing to humanity. And of course, art reflects what society is going through. So the more the diverse and less discovered, and I think maybe like there was some talk about how to introduce art to young students. So maybe you could work on organizing visits by school students to these art galleries. Like I've lived in Europe, and what they do, like they open the art galleries on Sundays. Like ironically in India, they are closed on Sundays or certain days, or maybe everything shuts by 5 p.m. So for people to engage and like creating that discerning audience, like you said. So, and also I think the people who also are kind of connoisseurs of art, they are also very self-aware. Like when you explain that, when you tell them about art, it's having that deeper connect with the person. What really matters to that person, their own emotional identity, their personality. Like the art is an extension of their own personality. So when you as a someone who's from a gallery explains something, and you have that understanding that so I think it's a very big responsibility to
I think that's a very, very good point. It's a shared responsibility, right?
Exactly.
So all of you all need to bring all your kids to see this show and many more.
Yeah, in
right?
fact, I think one of the reasons we are recently kind of expanding our gallery space in South Point is largely because we felt that we wanted to do more programs with kids, and we wanted a space where, you know, kids could come and, you know, we could do little workshops, but around the art that was there, and you know, around art appreciation. So hopefully, you know, in about a few months, there'll be a space for kids to come and kind of appreciate art.
So I just wanted to add, I was just thinking, it would be so interesting to have art appreciation for adults as well. Like, you know, how many of us have ever attended an art
Rahul, you can add
appreciation
that.
course? It would be fabulous.
It'll be great. It'll absolutely be a lovely thing to do. Any specific questions?
So I just wanted to mention one more thing, like the day your display was put up. So I noticed one piece of art that really stood out for me, and I already connected with the Quorum team even before it was open to the public. And I was like, yeah, this work of art like really speaks to me.
That's exactly how you should collect. Thank you so much. Yes. There was a question here. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Aditi, and it was wonderful listening to all of you. Just a quick question. You spoke about the role of mentoring, like the role that galleries play in mentoring emerging artists. So I was just wondering, how does that balance out with the whole essence of being authentic in your expression? Like, how do you mentor? Like, how much do they change? Do you ask them to change? So I was just curious about what's the role of mentoring in for emerging artists.
Right, absolutely. That's a very good question, and I will just quickly share my comments and views, and then Gayatri, you could add. See, I mean, art education in the country is pretty archaic. It's not particularly, you know, there are a few universities looking at liberal arts that we are aware of that is sort of forward-looking. Otherwise, it's pretty skill-oriented training, right? And unlike many other professions, like in the corporate world, you're sort of thrown into a structure. So even as an absolute management trainee, there is a whole system and a structure around you to support you, right? As an artist, the day your master's is over and your final thesis exhibition is over, you are out in the world with absolutely no structure, probably vultures. And what do you do in that space? So you very quickly start doing things which you believe is aesthetically pleasing, which sells, mimicking the West at times, etc., right? So there's an information overload and visual cacophony through the phones that we have and social media. So in that time and in space that we're in, right, for this vulnerable lot, mentoring is very critical. And exactly what you said, I believe it is to allow them to sort of encourage them, sometimes literally force them to follow their voice, to remain authentic. I'll just take a very quick, short example. I'm the moderator, not the speaker. Damn. But we were at, a final thesis exhibition. Gayatri and I went literally last week. One of the artists had this beautiful, minimal abstract works. If I'm allowed to say that it is an artist that both Gayatri and I purchased work at her final thesis show, the only work that she bought. So I go a bit crazy, but literally she put the money and we both did to buy her work. Her comment was that someone just came a couple of minutes before we met her, someone senior, and said, don't do abstract art, nobody understands, मैं भी पहले करता था, figurative करो, उन लोगों को वही समझ आता है. and we spent like good 10 minutes with her to say, no, it's all right. That was an experience of somebody. You follow what you want to do. Your works are extremely beautiful and delicate. And I mean, we want them, right? So where I'm getting at, this entire idea of mentoring is actually exactly what you said, for them to remain authentic and original, for them to source from their experiences and immediate environment, and not really talk about partition of the country, which is still something that, we all know about. It bothers us, it informs us, forms us. But that's not what they're worried about. They're worried about a whole lot of plethora of other things. So be authentic to your experiences. Gayatri, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think Rahul's really covered most of it, but there's also some like very administrative stuff which can really kind of ruin an artist's career, like pricing. So it's about ensuring that they price right, so to encourage collectors to become part of their journey. It is also to kind of keep them informed on what's happening around. A lot of them are not coming from backgrounds that know the kind of art that exists around the world. So I think it's a lot of even informative stuff that we do that is part of the mentoring, apart from, what I think we have mentors like Rahul who focus on just pushing them to kind of, stay very true to the expression.
Absolutely. Does that answer your question?
Sure, yeah, absolutely it does. Thank you.
I want to throw in something over there, and knowing that, Aditi, you're a coach yourself. Remember one thing, artists are also human beings, right? And there's going to be people who are going to mentor like a manager or a teacher, so they will instruct, and they'll be married to their instruction. And then they're going to be the coaches and the leaders who are going to impart philosophy. The reason I wanted to throw in that comment, because I've been witness to a very beautiful Guru-Shishya relationship that I've seen my wife go through with a guru. And having said that,
right,
the principles are always universal. I learned more about coaching versus teaching, and a leader versus a manager by watching that guru focusing always on the philosophy, not on the instruction. Because it's very easy also for some people in all forms of art and corporate world to stifle a talent simply because they're married and narrow-sighted in what they do.
It's a very, very beautiful parallel. Time for maybe one last question. Yes, please.
Hello, my name's Clay, and I'm an artist. So I'm speaking from the other side of this whole collection idea. And as an artist, it takes a lot to put a work of art out there. It's like you're producing a baby every time you make a new work of art. And so the thing that I am very wary about is giving that work off to somebody who may not have the right intention for it, may just be seeing it as we're talking a lot about money tonight, and may see it as just a commercial thing to buy and to sell later on for higher value. So I guess my question is, how are you guys going to be educating other collectors about how to properly collect work and help the artist in the long term? Because a work of art, we don't produce art to become billionaires. We produce art because we have something to say to the world. But I think that that's being lost a lot nowadays with this whole art fairs and this collector idea of money, money, money. But like that was never the case 20 years ago. And that's when all the best work has been created. Now, all these young kids are producing work because they think they can make some commercial value out of it, I see. And I went to art school, I went to Royal College of Art in London, and I saw a lot of kids who were just producing art to make money. And I think it's the point of the collector to really educate themselves about how to properly collect work that will get into the right place so that the artist then can grow through that. So is there a way that you guys are going to be able to educate other collectors?
So I think that's a brilliant last question. Thank you so much for asking that question. Thank you for sharing that point of view. I want to bring in an artist. I'm also a practicing artist, and before I get the panel to respond to it. So there are multiple ways to look at it, right? As an artist, I think you're absolutely right. It's our need to create. It's our need to say something with what we are creating. So to an extent, the way I do it, the way I practice it, I've created this work. I enjoyed making it, and I've said what I wanted to say. I let, the second part of everything else be handled by the gallery ecosystem. Yes, there are times somebody responds to my work and they really emotionally connect and they want to have it. That's great. There are times it's just a blank wall they want to fill up.
Yeah.
They don't even know what it means. But is it right for us to put that load and that luggage of be a proper collector before you buy my work? Is that how important that is something that as an artist, sort of I take a step back and say, you know what? I've had my fill by making this work. I really enjoyed it, and I don't care about it beyond a point. Yes, it's like a child that you've created and you're stepping back. I mean, I understand that. But Manisha, you're also an artist. Would you like to sort of quickly comment on this fact that if your work is going to a collector who's not really, emotionally connecting the way you created it, how do you deal with that, do you? But quick response.
I think when I finish the work, till that moment I'm connected to it wholeheartedly. But the moment it's finished and I put my signature, I leave it to the universe. But I know what you're saying when you see a crass collector, you don't want your work given. I had an experience like that, and this person did say, Manisha, can you make a few more? And I just said, no, I won't.
But
I can't dictate that. So when I give my work to a gallery, I can't dictate who takes it. The gallery, if it's an intelligent gallery, will decide that for me.
I think it's also the point of the artist to not perpetuate these ideas of selling to high clients just to make money, though. Because if the artist keeps doing that, then this whole cycle will just continue.
So to an extent, it is, if you are charging for your art, money is involved. And okay, money is not a bad word.
No.
It's not a vulgar word at all, right?
I completely agree.
So with that, if money is involved and someone is in need of money now and they need to get out of everything they have because there's an important medical emergency or something, what's the problem in them selling the art?
The problem's not that. It's the other people, it's the other artists who see that and then go, oh, I can make money doing this, so I'm just going to make something random to try to make money.
But I think that is something that is integral, and it is going to be part of every single profession or a following. It is something that happens. There are those who truly follow their voice, and there are those who mimic and sort of do it for the sort of shallow reasons for it. Yes, if there's a very, very quick...
Yeah, I have a quick comment.
Tight on time. Yes.
Collector and a coach. And I've done talks both addressing the collectors and I've done talks addressing the artists. And I would say as an artist, the less you're distracted by what they're doing around you, the safer you are.
Very well said.
Absolutely be grateful that there is a commerce around. The commercial part of art was a joy kill for me. But I'm glad it happened, because it's also made art significant and put attention to it, right? IPL sells, that's cricket, right? Because there's money behind it. And the other, talent is dwindling. So I would say, first, let's be grateful for that commercial part. Second part is, every artist is also a human being. Check your own personality. If you are built naturally to be a competitor, that's the coach in me now talking. Be careful, because competitiveness can go into a very dark space. So what you want to do is tune out. Right? And you'll find a tremendous amount of freedom in your work. And do not bastardize your work. Do be truthful to yourself. You don't need every collector, but you need the collector who really loves your work, and they'll find you.
Well said. Thank you.
Amit, you wanted to say something. You please close it. Thank you so much.
So first of all, thank you. That's a great question, and you're coming from a very purist point of view, which is what I think we mentioned, that on graduation shows you meet young artists who really don't know what to say or how to navigate. I'm talking from the point of view as a collector right now, and I think as a collector of emerging art, where 20 years ago it wasn't a career. When I took up art, my father didn't speak to me for 8 years because he's like, what is this guy going to do? I did have my jeans and the jholas and whatnot. But today it's a career like being a management student or being anything. And your exposure is so much more than what we had as art students as well. I mean, the internet is now your biggest, I would say, ally to learn what's happening. There are awards that judge you. There are grants that judge you, and that all adds value to you as an artist. So I agree with the panelists here when they say, be pure to your art, but leave the business to the people who understand it. If you get a good gallerist, they will make sure your art is placed well. If you're on your graduation show, maybe at the Royal College, you would have bumped into collectors who would just come and maybe, like what Gayatri said, don't do abstract art, it won't sell. Then you know that you don't want to sell it to them. I think all of you are learned enough as this generation to take that call. But there's another point of view to it. You're coming from a slightly more privileged point of view. Indian artists, and many of them, if you just go to Gayatri's gallery, and many of them are on display here, come from extremely low-income backgrounds. And I used to be that snoot collector who says, listen, he's doing it for money, I don't want to buy it. But now when I look back at my career, I said, what's wrong if the artist wanted to make money? I mean, for him or her, it was a career to maybe make a living and feed his family and to fulfill his ambitions. So please remain pure as you are. I love it. It's very nice to find artists like that today. But I would say leave the business to the people who understand it. Don't be picky about who's buying your work now. Be picky when you have a few solo shows under your, behind you. You've done a Biennale, you've done a fair. Then you can command to know where your work is going. If you do it now, I don't think any gallery will work with you. That's also the harsh reality. So, but anyways, thank you everyone. I mean, it's always nice to know so much about collecting young art and how to navigate the art market. I'm sure you have thousands of questions, and these guys are not running away. So catch hold of them right now and ask them questions. And on your way out, don't forget the show's still on, which Art Incept has put up. It's fantastic. It's all emerging young artists who they have nurtured, mentored. All these points were spoken about. And yes, have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you.